All right, good morning, everybody. Today is practice squad day, and today is also waiver claim day. Hundreds of players across the league were released, and anybody could pick them up. So there was definitely some roster movement, and the Seahawks took part in it. So we've got quite a few things to get through today in this video, so I'll jump right into it. First, we're going to talk about a couple of players that the Seahawks picked up off waivers. Basically, waiver order is determined by how good or bad your team was last year. So the worst teams in the league go first, and then the better teams in the league go last. So basically, teams like the Jaguars and Jets had first dibs, and then you had teams like the Eagles had and Texans would have second dibs, and on and on and on. And eventually, the Seahawks get a chance to make waiver claims, and they claimed two players. And both these guys, if they want to stick around, will have to be part of the 53-man roster, which is really interesting because you would not necessarily have assumed that there would have been a lot of guys on this roster that we would have been jonesing to cut. A few, but not enough to where you would expect a lot of waiver wire pickups to have filled those gaps. But let's find out exactly what we're doing here. Brady Henderson reports that the Seahawks have been awarded Dakota Shepley, an offensive lineman from the 49ers, and defensive back Nigel Warrior from the Ravens. So we have to clear two roster spots to make room, which means two guys who made the 53-man roster as of yesterday. He goes on to say that Seattle had 11 offensive linemen on the initial roster, so at least one of the cuts will probably come there, and we will come to that in a moment here because, spoiler alert, we've already made at least one decision there as of the time of this recording. But before we get into the roster decisions that were made to correspond to these two pickups, oh, hello, Yannick Perez Verti. Welcome to the channel, buddy. Let's talk about these two players a little bit. So, Field Goals wrote a little bit about these two, so let's start with Dakota Shepley. He is an offensive lineman who failed to make the roster with the New York Jets in 2018 after not being drafted. He played in the Canadian Football League in 2018 and 2019, and he played a little bit last year for the 49ers, so he does have some actual NFL experience. He played guard when he entered the league and played tackle for the 49ers last year, and there is some reason to believe we might also see him as a center, but based off the roster move that we made to bring him in, it seems likely that he's going to be a guard, and we'll get into that in a moment. But this is an athletic guy, which corresponds to the typical player profile that I expect Shane Waldron to covet, so that makes sense. And then you have a Nigel Warrior. He was let go by the Baltimore Ravens, undrafted in 2020. He has spent his entire career on the practice squad for the Ravens, so no NFL experience to speak of there. Not a whole lot to say about them, but let's do the best that we can. Corbin Smith did the best that he could on Twitter, and you guys know I like Corbin Smith for the most part. I like his Seahawks takes. I like the way he reports on the teams. So what he has to say is this: Dakota Shepley received an 80.6 grade from PFF in the preseason, played 70 snaps at center, 15 at right guard, 11 at left guard, so he showed some versatility, and he allowed 0 pressures on 36 pass blocking plays. Now, it's the preseason, you're playing against backups, you're playing in a less competitive environment, etc., etc. I'm not going to act like this means that we can start putting Kyle Fuller in our rearview mirror, but he played pretty well in the preseason, and he deserves some credit for that, and it does seem like there may be a little something here. This is probably the most interesting of the two guys. I feel like the fact that we picked him up off waivers, and given the state of the roster and the roster moves that we made to keep him, it seems very likely that Dakota Shepley will be on the team, the 53-man roster, that is, to at least start the season. Now, as for Nigel Warrior, he is a little shorter than the typical Pete Carroll corner. He is sub 6 feet tall, but he has long arms, 32.5 inches, actually a little above 32.5. Ravens have been playing him at cornerback recently, so he may very well project as another experimental cornerback to use. We've certainly had our fair share of those kinds of players over the years. Nigel Warrior could easily be the next one. I don't know who gets who gets the axe for this roster move, but we'll find out in the very near future. Okay, now we get to the corresponding roster moves that we made to bring on these two guys. Shocker here, at least for me, the Seahawks cut Phil Haynes, guard, 4th round pick in 2019. He heads to the waiver wire, meaning that every team will have a chance to pick him up before he comes back to the Seahawks. And I spent a little bit of time talking up Phil Haynes after the preseason. I spent a little bit of time talking him up after his cameo in the playoffs in 2019, where I thought he held up pretty well. So I'm a little surprised and a little disappointed in this one, because not only was Phil Haynes potentially intriguing depth at guard, but he also had a little bit of potential to maybe be our center, because he practiced there a little bit and it seemed like things were going fairly well. Now, obviously, the hope is that Phil Haynes makes it through waivers and gets back to the practice squad, but there's no guarantee of that. Now, is there? Phil Haynes had a good preseason. Phil Haynes has put some good tape out there. Not hard to believe that somebody out there is going to want him. So, that being said, the team has made the move that they have made. I don't agree with it. I don't care for it, but it is the move that they have made. So, that also kind of indicates how we might be planning on using our new acquisitions. So if you go here, Phil Haynes, you are off the team for the moment. Dakota Shepley, so I believe that is spelled like that, is now the backup right guard behind Gabe Jackson. And Phil Haynes becomes a very important practice squatter to try to keep around. So we're going to put him here. And as for who we're going to bump off, that's actually kind of difficult to determine. It might be Jordan Simmons because he's a veteran and might be above the practice squad. Could be Lestage because we didn't get to really see him at all in the preseason. I don't know if we're still enamored with him, and if not, it's very easy to imagine he comes off. We do have 4 receivers here. We could definitely let one of these 4 guys go. I, however, am going to temporarily go with Pierre-Olivier Lestage as the release, and you may see him become an alternate now, but that would be my best guess. We'll probably know by the end of the day what direction the team actually decided to go with. As for the addition of Warrior, I cannot yet guess. If he's going to replace a cornerback, then the only guy on this roster that he could replace really is Trey Flowers, and I don't know which of those two I would rather keep around at this point. Like, Trey has problems, but I feel like his upside might be higher than Nigel Warrior's upside, even knowing what he did last year. So this is my best guess as of right now. Time will tell. Okay, so got some positive news here, some unequivocally positive news here that I want to go into before we end this video, and it concerns Quandre Diggs. Quandre Diggs expects to return to practice play against the Colts. Field Goals has a full article on this. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's quite long and it's a little rambly, because quite frankly, Quandre Diggs was a little vague when trying to describe his situation. Short story is that he is planning on playing week 1. He cannot imagine not playing week 1, and he's not really holding out trying to get a new contract. He wants a new contract, but every player in the league wants a new contract, pretty much. So he's not expecting a new contract right now, and he's just holding out to take care of some business. He didn't really clarify 100% what that business was, but most people have concluded that he is taking out an insurance policy on himself. So, as near as I can tell, he is basically trying to ensure that he is going to get some security past this season. And he's not going to get it from the team right now. So, he's taking out an insurance policy on himself. He's basically going to say, okay, if I get hurt playing football this year, I'm going to collect on some insurance settlement and protect myself that way, which makes a lot of sense and seems very smart to me. It's obviously going to cost him some money this year to acquire that insurance policy, but it's certainly well worth it given the risk that he's taken on. So my interpretation would be that there is nothing to be concerned about as a Seahawks fan, and that is the interpretation I've kind of had all along. So Quandre Diggs will be on the field for week 1 almost certainly. He's just trying to get an insurance policy on his body, basically. All right, so one last thing before we head out here, because today is practice squad day. Good news here as well. Not a single Seahawks cut was claimed on waivers. Not Cade Johnson, not Penny Hart, not John Radigan, not Robert Kimdichie. Nobody got picked up, which is great news. All of them are eligible to sign on the practice squad. That does not include Phil Haynes because he was just released like 15 minutes ago as of this recording. So we don't know about him yet, but everyone else made it through. And as a little bit of a teaser, we know one of the pickups to the practice squad, Josh Johnson, which is a great get. This is a great practice squad get. Big W here. Very happy we were able to keep him. Not that he lit the world on fire in the preseason for me, but he showed some good skills, and I didn't think we were going to be able to keep him. So, good get there. We'll get word on the other 16 spots later today, but I'm going to get out of here for now. Peace out, Go Hawks. See you guys later today.